Hello, good morning, and good afternoon to all of our viewers. My name is Maciej, and I have an utmost pleasure to welcome you all at today's webinar, co-organized by ourselves from Hardtank and our friends from Urnex. So before I jump to introducing all of our speakers, I would like to outline that the webinar will take about 45 minutes, after which we will also have a Q&A section. It is live on YouTube, among other platforms. But if any of your friends or co-workers are not able to watch it live, it will be also shared as a record later on. So don't worry if you can't make it on time, you will be running late or running short. The whole webinar will be able for later viewing. All right, so the topic of today's webinar is how to prepare your cold brew safely, how to minimize the microbial activity while preparing cold extracted drinks. Regardless if it's Hardtank or any other traditional cold brew method, an example, we're going to cover all that. But before we go into the merit, let's start with a brief introduction of not only us as speakers, but firstly us as the companies who are co-organizing it. So I'll take the advantage of introducing ourselves. We are called Hardtank, which is a brand of hard beans, a coffee technology hub, which was established back in 2017. And what we do in hard beans is we turn research into business solutions. And one of those solutions is Hardtank, cold brew extraction technology, which we patented and launched on the market back in 2020. And since then, we apply this cold extraction technology into multiple different fields of cold brew market. At the moment, we operate in 4 areas, which is coffee roasting. This is where we started. Hardtank technology, which I've already briefly mentioned. We also produce ready-to-drink beverages based entirely on our Hardtank technology. And we also develop technology that allows us to recycle coffee grounds that we produce plenty of while producing our RTD products. The company is about 45 people and 3 manufacturing sites at the moment. So that's enough on Hardbeans and Hardtank. And let me give the stage to Martin, who will introduce our friends and partners from Urnex. Martin, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And let me give me a brief introduction of the company, or starting by myself first. My name is Maarten van der Loop, and I am the director for the EMEA region for Urnex. Urnex is a US-based company, and we develop and manufacture, and in the end, of course, sell coffee cleaning products for the coffee equipment. And we're doing that since, as you can read, 1936. We are a company with a global footprint, we can say, and that is not only because we distribute our products on a global scale, but also our team. And our team of chemists, our technicians, the people working on the floor in the production, but also the team of the commercial members that are based on a global scale. And all of them have like the expertise that we need to develop those cleaning products for the different types of coffee equipment. We do that for different types. As you can see, we do it for professional and household types of equipment. And we work closely together with different types of the industry. And one of them is the coffee equipment manufacturers, like what we're having this webinar together with Hardtank. But we're also very proud to be able to tell that with, let's say, 70% of the machine manufacturers on a global scale trust Urnex as their partner for the cleaning products. And next to that, I see the screen is flickering a bit, but next to that, we also work with our off-the-shelf products with distributors on the globe who are able to help get our products available for the people all over the world. And we do that through our distribution, through our, of course, US market-based factory, but we also have a distribution hub in Europe for the European market, but also in Hong Kong for the Asian market. And together with this team of professionals, we are very proud and able to maintain the strong relationship with the industry to make sure that we help our partners and our friends to make the coffee taste better with working with the Urnex product. So very happy to be part of this conversation and webinar today. And in the end, if there's any questions, feel free to ask them to me during the session that is for that at the end of the webinar. So thanks for joining us and enjoy the webinar.
Thanks a lot, Martin. That's fantastic to have you aboard. So without further ado, we're going to introduce each of ourselves, the speakers for today. So let's start with Chris Barabush, my partner in crime and in friend. Chris, would you say hello to our viewers?
Yep. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you again on the webinar made together today with Urnex brands. That's a really important topic we will be covering today. A little bit about me for those who didn't join us in the previous webinars. I'm one of the co-founders of Hygiene and also Hardtank. I'm responsible for the coffee roastery, green coffee buying, and R&D department. So many studies that we do, like Maciej said previously, are baked in science. I'm like in the coffee community, Polish coffee community, for many, many years, more than 10 plus, 15 plus, I would say, years. I was former SCA events coordinator doing more than 30 championships, national championships. So I would say quite experienced on the market, but now deeply focused on spreading new technologies and finding new ways of brewing, extracting, and enjoying the coffee, of course.
And Chris will take the stage in a couple minutes from now to make a deep dive into microbiology of cold brew, sharing some research data from the research that we've done in Hardtank to learn more about microbiology in cold brew. So let's move to Damien, our guest speaker for today. The first time we're sharing a stage with you, Damien. Hello.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. First time for me being on the webinar with Hardtank. So I'm with Urnex for almost 8 years, 21 years in total in the coffee industry. My role with Urnex, I'm almost a translator between the mechanics of a coffee machine and the chemistry of cleaning products. So I call myself multilingual. So mainly working with OEMs to develop the cleaning technologies with their machines, but also problem solving with OEMs who have problems on their machines, working with them to try and, I suppose, discover their issues and to come up with solutions. So for me, yeah, really exciting to be here today. And thank you guys for the opportunity to be able to speak on Urnex behalf today.
A pleasure. We're lucky to have you with us today. So a few words about myself to finish the introduction part. I'm also one of the co-founders of Hard Beans and Hardtank, responsible for our global sales and operations, mostly in the RTD sector. I started as a barista back in early 2000s, went all the stages through as a competitor, trainer, consultant, business owner, and eventually, together with our team at Hardtank, we're building the company together. So about 15 plus years in the industry so far, Now a little bit less working with the product itself and a little bit more working on the market, global market for cold brew, which is one of the fastest growing sectors of the coffee industry overall. But this is something for yet another topic. And speaking about today's topic, let's dive deeply into it and begin with the, well, I'd say the elephant in the room. The hygiene and microbiological aspects of cold brew are very often the topics that we either do not know about or we pretend they don't exist, which I don't know, frankly, which one is worse. And it's not like we were very much aware of those aspects in the very beginning of our cold brew journey back in 2018 when we started our research project around cold brew. But along the way, we've learned how massively important those topics are. And like I said, regardless if you use Hardtank for your cold brew process or you use your plastic bucket, whatever it is, hygiene and microbiological aspects are vital for cold brew. And let us tell you why. So, a very short introduction for those of you who have never been familiar with the terms cold brew or nitro cold brew, because we are going to use plenty of those today, I guess. Cold brew coffee or cold brew tea, cold brew cascara, cold brew whatever, is a cold extracted drink, which usually, traditionally, are coffee grounds steeped in cold water or room temperature water, most of the times for extended period of time. Let it be anything from 12 to even 24 hours. And like I said, cold brew is taking the market, global coffee market, by a storm right now, mostly because of its exquisite taste profile, mild acidity and bitterness, high caffeine content, and a very refreshing overall taste profile. Whereas nitro cold brew is basically a way of serving your cold brew drinks by saturating it with the nitrogen. And the reason we do it is because we want to add this creamy, soft, fluffy texture to your drink and make it more visually appealing as well. So these are the two most common used phrases, but just to give you heads up, cold brew is not only about coffee, although 9 out of 10 cases, when we think of it, we probably think of coffee, and this will be our main point of focus today. However, all of those microbiological aspects will not only apply to coffee, but anything cold brew based. All right, so that's about the cold brew 101, and let's talk about hygiene and the hidden risks of it applying to cold extraction. So, the traditional cold brew making, the way you see it here in the picture, which is basically a paper or cotton filter filled with coffee grounds, steeped in water, plastic bucket for multiple hours, usually in room temperature, somewhere in the back of your coffee shop. It brings plenty of issues. That was actually the main reason we got interested in cold brew back in 2018, because, well, we didn't really like it at all. So the main issue is, of course, the time, but it do not only affect your productivity, your efficiency, your on the business side of it, but those low yields will also bring some other hygiene slash microbial issues, such as oxidation, such as inefficiencies in your operation, because traditional cold brew making is a pretty complicated and complex process. And at each of those stages, there is manual labor and there is a lot of risk for an error. And even worse, there is a lot of risk for contamination because of, well, poor hygiene practices in most of the coffee shops. Let's be frank and honest. We all work in the food industry, but when we work with hot coffee, well, there is high temperature factor that clears out plenty of our mistakes in case of cold brew. There is no high temperature to be a protection layer against our mistakes. And anyone who've ever made cold brew traditional way, we very well know how does it look like. And this picture in the screen right now, this is actually a picture that comes from one of the cold brew equipment manufacturers' promotional materials. This is how people make cold brew on a daily basis. This is how we thought it's a proper way to do it, with your bare hands, somewhere putting your bucket somewhere in the sink, not really taking any care of hygiene, which not only can affect the quality of your product, the health of your consumers, but it also affects the consistency of the product because of lack of knowledge and control. So going deeper, what are the microbiological risks of cold brew? Well, we have to remember that when making cold brew, we make cold coffee without hot water. So there's nothing to disinfect any kind of microbes that we have either on our hands and then in our coffee, in our grinder, and then eventually in our cups. So hot water will not protect us against it. Then coffee and tea, in example, are low or mildly acidic products, which means they have a pH of above 5 most of the time. And that means these products are not acidic. And this means the microbes can survive and even proliferate in such a product. So again, there's not this layer of protection in cold brew. And then if you combine it with poor cleaning practices, because manual cleaning of plastic buckets, filters, glass jars, pipes, hoses, dispensers, etc., is a lot of labor, if you combine all those factors, you can get a perfect storm. And what you can't see on the surface of your cold brew most of the time, it actually is a living organism, and Chris will tell you more about it just in a moment. So just to wrap this intro up, what are the challenges, additional challenges here? The risk factors that are prompted by oxidation, unclean equipment, your tanks being open to any external contamination, and long extraction time that amplifies all of those combined together. You have no control over your extraction process, making cold brew traditional way. The temperature can fluctuate, whatever is there in the air can fluctuate, and therefore the microbial content of your cold brew is non-consistent at all. Then you have issues with general hygiene. Anyone who had ever placed their big 20-liter bucket of cold brew in the back of the coffee shop next to takeaway cups, next to coffee bags, and next to sandwiches, you know what I mean. And then because of that, you need a lot of space if you make cold brew traditional way. You don't want to run out of all of your cold brew. So you put buckets next to each other, cramped, and you don't have a separate refrigerated room to do so, right? If you do it the traditional way. And on top of all that, there is a lot of cleaning time required to clean and sanitize or wash and sanitize your cold brew equipment. So it is very common that we take shortcuts here. Or basically, because of the lack of knowledge, we just don't clean and sanitize our equipment properly. So if we don't tick all the boxes, things can go wrong. And this is where the dirty truth comes into the play. So now Chris will guide you through the darkest secrets of cold brew making process.
So everyone, basically, it's not that we never used traditional immersion, long-time brewing equipment in our coffee shops, because we were serving our cold brews since 2012 straight from the tap, doing it with, I would not say it's a machine, but like a brewer, immersive brewer we built together with the beer industry, but still it took us many hours to brew, and especially in the weather conditions we have in Poland, it's quite risky, because if you don't make enough cold brew, you have the risk that you will not have enough portions for your customers. If you do too little, like too much, then you need to waste it. When we started to study on Hardtank, so how to make the cold brew faster, we did already collaborated with universities and also Institute of Heavy Organic Synthesis. Nowadays, besides the universities, the Institute of Heavy Organic Synthesis, while having the RTD line, we are also working with accredited laboratories to not only assess our production, but also to assess our R&D. But back in the days, we conducted a study with the Institute of Microbiology at the University of Opole, where we were examining the microbiological risks in cold brew coffee stored in different conditions. Back then, to be honest, we didn't thought that coffee is a mildly acidic product that should be stored in below 5 degrees Celsius. So what we did, we used kegs in first trial, like washed in hot water kegs, not sterilized. And we also used sterile bottle, like laboratory sterile bottle. Also keep in mind that all this study was done not in the back of a coffee shop, not in the back of a bar. It was done at the university in the laboratory with fully precautions and safety conditions. So the kegs, which were cleaned only with a basic cleaning agent, no focus on brushing, just washed, were already contaminated within those 24 hours when we brewed the coffee traditional way. After those 24 hours, after that, another 24 hours in the room temperature, which was back then 25 degrees Celsius, that was the summertime, we had a very massive yeast growth and spoilage. And those yeast, you could see few pictures in the back, which is quite interesting because coffee doesn't contain yeasts. Mostly when we assessed the yeast came from the palm of the hands. So yeah, that's what you can see here on the right. Those are floating yeasts that you don't see in a keg because on the normal basis it's closed and infused with nitrogen. So once we had the sterile bottles, the growth of bacteria was way lower and the presence was way lower. But even though if we were keeping it in a room temperature, which is officially not allowed, the bacteria was growing, even E. coli, which was quite shocking for us. So the next graph will show you the colony forming units in cold brew after different storage conditions and 1 to 5 days. So after making the cold brew, which is the day 0, first 24 hours, we kept it storing in 5 degrees Celsius, 10 degrees Celsius, 15 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius, 25 degrees Celsius. Now we know that it should be kept below 5 degrees Celsius, but back then we wanted to see how different conditions are affecting the brew. And as you can see already on a day 1, so after brewing in a room temperature, the amount of colony forming unit was above the European regulation threshold. That means that as a coffee shop owner, barista, head barista, whatever, you need to drain it, put it to the waste. Only the cold brews kept below 5 degrees Celsius were, let's say, safe until day number 5, meaning that still we lose day number 0. So 6 days, but first day is the brewing day with a traditional brewing method. But now imagine that it's not only keeping the kegs in a refrigerated state, it's also brewing in this refrigerated state. So Maciej just said briefly that coffee is a low acidic or mildly acidic product, means that the pH is above, in many cases, above 4.6. When we are having a product, a liquid product, a beverage of a pH of 4.6 and more, we are obliged by the rules, by the European regulations, by the FDA in the United States, to be only in this danger zone, which is above 5 degrees Celsius, below 60 degrees Celsius for only 2 hours. So if our extraction time takes longer than 2 hours, or our extraction and serving in the room temperature takes longer than 2 hours, we are obliged to be or below 5 degrees Celsius or above 60 degrees Celsius. And now imagine, in many cases, even this old school from 60s, Kyoto-style drippers. So those big towers with dripping waters over the coffee bed that are extracting cold brews. In most of the cases, it's really well exposed at the front of a coffee shop, but it's quite risky, not only to maintain this equipment clean, but also afterwards to drink those beverages from in any way or any form later on. So once you like, our key findings were that, as rules says, unpasteurized cold brew, which is really important to say, unpasteurized cold brew must be stored below 5 degrees Celsius. And it's quite expensive, especially when you want to make few coffees, like 3 or 4 or 5 coffees with a traditional way. You need to have a quite huge storage room, cold room, where you keep this temperature very low. So that was for us the challenge: how to make it better, how to make it faster, how to make it more efficient and safer for our customers. And that's why we started the huge R&D project to find the solution, which is the Hardtank technology, so fast cold brew maker.
All right, thanks a lot, Chris, for this extensive tour through the research that we did, one of plenty studies that we've done. So you might be wondering, after those 30 minutes, what am I doing here? And why are those guys are telling that the cold brew is just one big bucket of mess? And should I really bother? And should I maybe delete it from my offerings? Well, there is good news as well, and Damien will be bringing some good news today to you, because there is a solution to hygiene and microbial issues with cold brew making, and this is why Urnex is on board with us today. So without further ado, I'm bringing the stage to you, Damien.
Just as well, there is a solution after looking at all those slides. So yes, let's look at cleaning of coffee equipment. So we'll break this into 2 sections here. So we have cleaning, removing all of the dirt and the soils, the things that we can see, the visual pieces that remain in our equipment. It's really important to be able to get rid of all of this, to clean your machine on a daily basis. But we need to be clear on this. Cleaning is removing these visual soils. It's not killing the bacteria that Chris is talking about there. That's why we need to look at sanitizing. So sanitizing is what kills the bacteria. It's the part that removes all of these invisible particles that we can't see, the microorganisms, the E. coli's, and can we do all of this at once? Yes, absolutely. We can. We can clean and we can sanitize, and that's why we have a product called Rinza. So for us, we have our Rinza liquid. Because this is coffee, we're going to concentrate on our alkaline cleaner. So our alkaline cleaner, as well as removing all of the oils that we see, it does have the ability to a bit of a kill factor, should we call it, for these bacteria. So on a daily basis, we need to be using a Rinza alkaline cleaner. We're going to dose it as appropriate on the instructions, but we also need to be doing a little bit of, I suppose, manual labor with this as well. So if we're looking at cleaning, you know, we have time, we have temperature, and we have agitation. So using a brush to get rid of these oils, these coffee oils that are inside our buckets and kegs, that's where we're going to introduce the manual agitation. And then we're going to let the Rinza chemicals do their work. We're going to let them sit inside in the system, and we're going to let them clean all of the oils. We're going to let them remove any residues. And it's important to do this because not just from the bacteria level, we also have to think about the quality aspect of it here. This is what you're trying to do. You're trying to give your customer the best quality product. And if you have any oils that remain inside in your kegs or your buckets, guys, this is removing all of the hard work that you have now done. So you could make the most fantastic cold brew product, but if you're not cleaning, over time, these oils are going to build up inside her, and you've just wasted all of your time making a fantastic product by not cleaning. So it's so important that you clean. Take, for example, you have a cup of tea at home. You don't just put your mug down or your cup down and leave it there and pick it up again 2 hours later and have another cup of tea. You clean it, you rinse it out, you put it into the dishwasher, or you clean it by hand. This is exactly what you need to be doing here with the cleaning process. You need to be cleaning your machine to remove all of this build-up, be it visual or non-visual build-up. You need to be using the Rinza alkaline product for this, because it's an alkaline product is for our coffees, and that's why we're going to use the alkaline for this. And it's quite simple. On our Rinza bottle, we have a dosing system. You're going to put 30 mils for 500 mils of water, and you're going to let the magic of Rinza work afterwards and have a super clean and super safe product to use then. It's easy, it's simple, it's not complicated, and that's what we're here to do. That's what Urnex are here to do. We're here to solve problems like this. So you have a problem, we're going to solve it for you, and that's the first step in this process for working with machine manufacturers like yourselves.
Okay, very well, Damien. I think this is high time to wrap up the hygiene requirements section and try to summarize. For those of you who wonder, what should I do? How should I make cold brew to make it in a clean, hygienic, and safe way? Right. So here are a few bullet points, and I think we can discuss on it, all of us, before we start the Q&A part of today's webinar. But I think it's some of those might be very obvious, like keeping your equipment and all the surfaces clean, right? But we couldn't speak enough about it in terms of cold brew, because like we said, there is no boiling water like we have in case of espresso machine. So even if your espresso machine or your batch brewer gets a bit dirty sometimes or not perfectly clean, most likely you're gonna kill the microbes with boiling water, which is not the case for cold brew extraction. So this is why your equipment and preferably everything around it should be just clean and shiny. All of your, not only just your cold brew maker, whether it's a plastic bucket or Hardtank or whatever else, but also your kegs, your hoses, your dispenser, anything that comes in contact with your cold brew product has to be super clean. That's, I think, a most essential outcome, and you can use Rinza to maintain that cleanliness, of course, but it doesn't end there. Another part is water quality. For all of us from the coffee industry, we know how essential water is for the quality of coffee brew, right? We know that in case of espresso, water is over 90% of your brew, and in case of filter coffee or cold brew, it's 98 0.5% of water inside of your coffee cup. So what comes into water is essential. But when we think of hot brewing again, we think of alkalinity, we think of carbonate hydrates, total dissolved solids, how much magnesium, how much calcium, how much buffer do I have in my water, but we don't really think, again, of the purity of water, which is, again, super important in terms of cold brew, because there will be nothing to disinfect your water. So if you don't have a proper water filtration, water treatment system, then guess what? Even if you maintain best practices towards your coffee, your equipment, your preparation method, maybe your water can be contaminated in a worst case scenario and can cause some microbial issues. So take this into consideration as well. And then yet another important part of the cold brew preparation is ingredient handling. Like Chris said, coffee goes through the roasting machine, which is where it is roasted in above 200 Celsius degrees temperature most of the time, right? So one can think of that, well, it can't be cleaner and more disinfected than that, right? But guess which is the dirtiest part of your coffee bar setup? You can put some comments in the comment section. We'll see whoever was right, but then I think Chris can give you an answer as a seasoned coffee shop manager. He can tell you what is the dirtiest part of coffee bar setup in an average coffee shop.
An average coffee shop is unfortunately the grinder, because we clean all the espresso machines, we clean our bars, we clean our dispensers, we brush everything, but raise the hand who was at least once sterilizing a coffee grinder. And once we grind the coffee, coffee is an organic matter, so not only the dry particles, but there are oils and acids that are during the grinding process that can stuck into the funnel, that can stuck in your on the burrs, and then it's a perfect playground for the microbes to grow, unfortunately.
And by the way, Urnex has a product for that.
Yeah, just as well, we are talking about that now because we do have that product. We have our grinds product, which is specifically designed for this. So, not that we're trying to give it a plug, but very, very quickly in 10 seconds, what grinds does, as well as removing any of the hard buildup of the coffee on the burrs. So we're now extending the life of the burrs. It's also removing any of these rancid oils that are stuck in there as well. So you can definitely pre and post cleaning with grinds, you can taste the difference. It's going to give a much sharper coffee. It's going to be much more effective at cleaning, and the burrs are going to last longer because you don't have these coffee particles floating around there dulling your burrs. Plug over.
Yeah, this is something that that is very often mislooked, I would say. The cleanliness of your grinder. We often speak about how to align burrs in your EK43. There are whole elaborates about it, special products to align your burrs, but virtually anyone talks about the purity, the cleanliness of an inside of the grinder, which, like we now know, can spoil all the efforts that we've taken before on preparing cold brew. So another point that Chris have mentioned, and this is super important, and I believe I can't speak enough about it, is the temperature control. So there are two ways you can handle your cold brew product. Either you keep it refrigerated, which is not easy and often expensive because you need extra fridge, you need extra space. You might not have thought about it when you were designing your coffee bar, coffee setup before you introduce cold brew to your offerings. So, it's difficult most of the time, and most of the people therefore do not do it, and they keep their cold brew in room temperature, which is really risky. So our reply to this is that you make your cold brew fresh. This is the whole purpose of Hardtank technology. You don't need to brew 20 or 25 liters of cold brew on the day before, and only because you are afraid you're going to run out of it. In case of Baby Hardtank, which is one of our products, you can brew 4 or 5 liters at a time and just make it as you go. So you never make your cold brew spoiled, stale, oxidized, contaminated, as long as you perform all the rest of the remaining parts of the process well. And to wrap it up with a maybe general but super important point are the hygiene practices. Your staff has to be trained. It doesn't really matter if you have the coolest cold brew making equipment, the best cleaning product, and you've checked all the boxes if your staff is not properly trained. And I've been working in the coffee industry, like I said, for 15 years, and I think I'm the youngest guy in the field here in terms of our maturity in coffee industry. And I've never heard of anyone training their staff and taking into consideration food safety and microbial issues with coffee making, not to mention cold brew making. So this is this elephant in the room. Us as an industry, as baristas, head baristas, coffee shop owners, trainers, we don't really pay enough attention. And this is also one of the purposes of today's webinar. So this is one of the questions from our viewers, which I see in the background. So that leads me to the final part of today's meeting, which is a Q&A session. So before we start answering to all of your questions, guys, let me thank to our speakers today, Martin, Damien, Chris. It was a great pleasure to be diving deep into darkest secrets of cold brew preparation. If you have anything you would like to add before we start the discussion with the viewers, go ahead.
I think it's okay.
All right. So it's a Q&A part right now, and there are plenty of questions. And let me start with the first one. So why do we recommend an alkaline cleaner and not an acidic cleaner? So Damien, you're the one to answer.
Yeah, I suppose when we're looking at what's within coffee. So alkaline cleaners, the purpose of an alkaline cleaner is to remove the fats and proteins. Okay, and the purpose of an acid cleaner is to remove the proteins and the minerals. So do we have minerals sitting inside in the coffee? No, it's easy. It's an alkaline cleaner that we're trying to use here to clean the coffee. If you want to use an acid cleaner, we're going to be focused more on milk, because that's where we're going to have our minerals within milk. So the alkaline cleaner, really easy. Coffee is alkaline, and we're trying to fight the acids that the coffee produces. So you want to kill an acid, you use an alkaline cleaner.
All right. So stay with us, Damien, because there's another tricky question for you regarding Rinza. So does Rinza work as a descaler too, or do we need another product for it?
Yeah. So yes, we have both Rinza acid and Rinza alkaline products. Rinza acid will work as a descaler. However, we need to be very careful with this. The purpose of having a Rinza acid is to use it as a milk cleaner to break down the minerals that are within the milk product. Okay, it's a very mild cleaner, and it's a very mild way of attacking any scale buildup. So if you want to use it, I'm specifically talking descaling now of lime scale as opposed to descaling of milk scale. Okay, if you want to descale lime scale, you need to have a specific descaling product. The concentration of the acid within the descaling product is much much more concentrated than it is within the Rinza product. But ultimately, to answer your question, does it work as a descaler? Yes, you can use it as a descaler, but it's going to be a very mild descaler.
All right, that's something I had no idea about. So I'm gonna learn from this webinar as well. So we're not slowing down, Damien. Yet another question for you that says Rinza comes in tablets and in liquid formula. Which one is better to use for baby Hardtank, and how much of that product should be used per cleaning cycle?
Yes, it does come as both tablet and in liquid format. But let's think about how we're cleaning here. We're cleaning the Hardtank with no temperature. We're cleaning at ambient temperature. Okay, so if you take a tablet and put it into ambient temperature water, you then need to sit around and wait for that to be completely dissolved. You need full dissolution of the product. So for Hardtank, it's better to use a liquid because it's ready to use. You dose one solution into the water and away you go with cleaning. Cleaning is difficult enough to get people to actually do cleaning. So why make it harder for them? And that's why, in my opinion, use a liquid when you're doing Hardtank cleaning. Avoid steps that are not necessary. But if you're stuck and you only have tablets and you don't have liquid, by all means, put your tablet into one tablet into your cold water, but you have to really make sure that it's fully dissolved. Otherwise, it's not that it's not going to work. It's not going. You're just wasting. If it's not fully dissolved, you're wasting your money. You're flushing unused product down the drain. So, just my opinion. Stay with liquid.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks a lot, Damien. So a few questions about storage of your cold brew. So the one from Laura here. Once you've prepared your cold brew, what's the best way to store it? I think we've covered it today, but it's never enough. So Chris, please tell us what are the best practices of storing your unpasteurized cold brew?
Of course, the first and foremost is keeping it cool, so below 5 degrees Celsius in your fridge. My recommendation is to use or kegs or containers, but be sure that those kegs and containers were cleaned and sanitized before. There are also ways that you can transfer your cold brew into bottles like 0.2 or 0.5 glass bottles, but again, be sure that those bottles were sterilized and cleaned before transferring the cold brew. I have experienced some cases in coffee shops that they were taking like freshly new bottles from a box and poured the cold brew directly into it. We cannot be sure and certain that those bottles were sterilized, and even though they did that. So keep it cold and use different way of containers. I recommend you stainless steel or glass, or if you use plastic, then be sure it's BPA free, so 310 or other food grade plastic. But keep it cool.
Yeah. Well, we have another question that is connected to the previous one. So Juan says that he makes his cold brew for 18 hours and he uses 3 filters system inside of the bucket, and then he pasteurizes the cold brew and bottle it and put it into the fridge of around 3 or 2 Celsius degrees, which is something that I'd like to underline and emphasize. You can and you should pasteurize or sterilize your cold brew if you want to bottle it, like Chris said. However, we need to remember that even though your cold brew is pasteurized, if your bottles are not sterile and you do not perform hot filling using hot cold brew, pasteurizing the inside of the bottle and then rapidly cooling it down, then chances are you're gonna fill those bottles with the beautiful, clean and pasteurized cold brew only to get it contaminated by the microbes inside of the bottle. And as long as you keep those bottles refrigerated for a couple of days, they should be fine, but you never know what will the consumer do once you take the bottle out of the fridge and sell it. So my recommendation, and this is something we've learned big time when we entered the industrial drink production in 2022, is that you perform the post-filling pasteurization. So my recommendation here would be to fill your bottles with your cold brew and then pasteurize the entire product using either tunnel, which is probably too big for an average coffee shop or a roaster, or in that case, immersive pasteurizer. So you basically immerse your bottles with your cold brew inside, closed, sealed, in hot water for a certain amount of time, then you lift it up and then you put it into the cold water bath to stop the pasteurization process. That would be something that would provide you with a safe shelf life of, well, that depends, but anything from a couple of weeks to even a couple of months. But again, this is still a thin line if you do it in a coffee shop, if you do it in a roastery, if you don't have a proper drink production facility. So this is not something I would recommend doing on the larger scale. I would rather leave it to someone who has all the proper equipment. Okay, so there is another technical question, and I think you will be a good person to answer to this, Chris. Do we need to brush baby Hardtank besides the automated cleaning method that it has? And how about the hoses that transport cold brew from Hardtank to the kegs?
Well, in terms of brushing it, it's all the like we are. You can use it if it's not a quite harsh brush, because otherwise you will scratch the glass, and that's even more dangerous because once you make those scratches, it's a perfect space for those microbes to hide in. So it's rather to use a soft thing, but it always depends. So like a very soft brush, I would say, especially when you use a very dark roasted oily coffee, it may do the job. But in most of the cases, a regular proper cleaning cycle, because it's recirculating all the time in the system, will do the job. Especially when you use good cleaning agents. And we know that Rinza, for example, works because we did the tests on that, even lab tests. In terms of the hoses, that's why there is only one hose for transfer. So there is one hose that you split at the end where you transfer it to the keg or to the waste, to the drainage. That's why we decided not to go with two hoses at a drain, because if you just have a separate hose for washing and sanitation, then your transfer hose for coffee, tea, and other products will be contaminated quite quickly. So you have one hose that transfers the cold brew from the Hardtank into the keg, and this hose is also flushed when you do the washing or sanitation.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Then a question from Alessio. Hello, Alessio. Nice to see you with us today in the webinar. About the purpose of today's webinar, whether we're doing it due to some kind of bad feedback or any trouble after sales. Luckily, not. We've never had any issues or complaints about our products, but like I said before, we really had no clue about anything we've just told you about today earlier on. And once we realize how important it is and how potentially dangerous it can be for consumers when you do not apply proper measures when making cold brew, we thought like we should speak about it out loud, because probably nobody knows about it in the industry, or like I said, we know but we pretend there is no issue, we just close our eyes. And also obviously because we learned that there is a way of doing it properly. right? We have a technology that helps you big time to avoid those problems. We have great partners and friends in Urnex who offer products that assure the safety of making cold brew. And we thought, like, well, it is important to talk about it because cold brew is still a novelty on the market, but it is, like I said, very fast growing novelty. And with anything that is very new, there is a lot of information chaos and information storm around it, and people not necessarily have to know all the details. So this is our one of the parts of our mission is to bring the knowledge to the industry and share that knowledge for free, basically. So this is the only purpose we do it. And by the way, when you consume a contaminated cold brew and you get, let's say, diarrhea, um, most of the time we blame food. We don't even think that the coffee might be causing our health issues, right? We don't associate this as a source of some microbial problems, and we probably gonna think there was bad food that we've eaten, but not necessarily food has to be one to blame. And yeah, like we said, this is one of the reasons we've spoke about um, uh, uh, all those things today. And then a different question to switch gears a bit. Maybe either Damien or Martin, you can respond. What about those tariffs? Are we going to be affected because of Urnex products being made in the US?
All of our products are made in the US. That's right. There is one exception, and that is Rinza liquid. So those products are made in the Netherlands. That was not done because of the tariffs. That was done of a logistical reason many years ago. But there is one product out of our portfolio that we are making in the Netherlands. So it is not well, it's still a USA product because the formula and the ingredients and all of that is owned by Urnex, but we use a third party to fill up that product here in the Netherlands, in Europe.
Okay, that's good to know. Lucky us, I would say. So we have plenty of questions to be honest, and I'm very happy to be reading all them. So another one regarding Hardtank technology is a question about the brewing the temperature of a brewing water, whether it's chilled or room temperature. So Chris, would you be so kind to answer to that question?
Yes, in terms of Hardtank, you connect it to your filtering system. So depending on the country where you are, that's the temperature of the brew. So there is no installed chiller inside the device to cool it down, or preheater or heating element to heat it up. So you brew in a room temperature, and that's your water. But all depends on the season. If it's winter, it will be in many cases below 10 degrees Celsius. If it's summer, it's around 20. It doesn't affect the extraction as much as we experience and test it, but that's how it works. So room temperature, but again, in terms of the food safety and even the mildly acidic environment, you make your cold brew within minutes instead of hours. We have customers who have recipes below 20 minutes. On average, is 40 minutes per brew. So according to the rules, you still have 1 hour to serve one batch, which is approximately 20 portions, or you can cool it down to the temperature that is required by the rules of HACCP. So just to go back in terms of that, the HACCP at the coffee shop is good enough in terms of a system to be cautious about the cold brew safety, because here one of the critical control points is the pH of your brew. If your brew pH is below above 4.6, you need to oblige the rule of mildly acidic environment.
All right, another one from Alessio. What about the hoses underneath the baby Hardtank? Once they're being cleaned, but there is still some water in it, probably containing some of the Rinza too. Is it going to get into my keg and is it safe to drink? So let me assure you, Alessio, there's no need to worry because the washing cycle and sanitation cycles of the Hardtank are designed in a way where the last final part of each of those modes is rinsing the machine with a clean water. So whatever was left in the hoses after using Rinza, the final part of the cycle is always rinsing the full container, all of the hoses, everything inside with clean filtered water. So if there's any liquid inside of your hoses, it's perfectly safe to consume. Okay, guys, I think that wraps up the discussion for today. There were plenty of questions, which I'm very happy about. It was an utmost pleasure to share the stage with you today, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much for being with us today. And for our viewers, if you'd like to get in touch with any of us, here are the details. You can visit our websites, you can send us a note, you can find us on the Instagram, and you can also find us at multiple different occasions during shows. Us as Hardtank will be present in the SCA show in Houston in a couple of days. I think that the Urnex crew will be there as well. So this is the first opportunity to meet some of us in person. Thank you so much, guys, for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.